The topic is the Declaration of Independence at the 21st Century, and we're talking to Dr. Bobby Lovett, an historian at Tennessee State University. And of course, Dr. Lovett, let's give you an opportunity over the last 5.5 or 6 minutes that we have here to deal with what might be considered the topic of this show, which is to say that this document was issued in 1776, but it had so many philosophical items in it that it still has some significance today, not only to us. So let's talk about that document as it stands today. Give us some directions in reference to this.
Well, to African Americans, the Declaration of Independence is a very important and sacred document, despite the contradictions of the Founding Fathers and even the Supreme Court over the years. As you know, in the Supreme Court case in the 1850s, Dred Scott case, a very conservative Supreme Court essentially said that African Americans were not citizens and therefore they had no rights and so on, which was absolutely untrue because they had fought in the American Revolution. There were many free African Americans who were citizens and voted for the ratification of the Constitution in 1788 and 1789. So all the historical evidence was contradictory to the racist pronouncements of the Taney Court in 1859. And since that time, we African Americans, whether through the NAACP or other civil rights movements, organizations, we have dealt with the Supreme Court and the Congress and state legislatures trying to justify denial of African American rights, saying they were not really citizens, and still African Americans today are fighting, for citizenship because there's still that notion, today that there's one group of citizens here, you call those citizens with privilege, and they even have a title for them, they call them whites. And then they have another group of citizens here that are supposed to have less privileges, and they have a title for them, they call them blacks. And then they have the others in the middle, and they call them others, they call them Hispanic whites, or they give them all kinds of silly titles that no other country in the world does but us. And so the Declaration of Independence, the philosophy of it about the fraternity and the equality and the freedom of man is still as important today as it was in 1776. And if we are not careful, men will twist that document to have meaning only for themselves, as many people did from 1776 until we fought the civil rights movement in 1954 with the Brown versus Board of Education case. But you will find that African Americans will celebrate the July 4th holiday more than any other Americans, despite all of the oppression they suffer, despite they have to continuously fight for their voting rights and continuously fight for an economic fairness, a piece of the American pie, which has not been realized since 1776. African Americans making up 13% of the population in 2001, but they only have 3% of the wealth in the entire country. They live off 3%, and they're 13% of the people. So that particular fairness and equality in American society has not happened since 1776. Still, you'll see African Americans celebrating July 4th more than anybody else. They still believe the American dream and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution upon which we are governed will one day be fully realized for all Americans.
And of course, Dr. Lovett, when that brings to mind, when you talk about the disparities here, that brings to mind one of the great controversies in reference to the modern society, and that is reparations, etc. Why don't you make a couple of historical statements in reference to that over the last 2 minutes? Let's see if we can get to it.
Well, the reparations movement, started really in the 1880s, and then it died out, which was about 15 years after slavery. There was a lot of talk about 40 acres and a mule, and the government was going to do this for African Americans and so on, and compensate them for 200 years of slavery. Their money and labor had been taken over that period of time. And now it has begun to rise again. And in the Congress, as you know, our city council passed a resolution supporting the resolution in Congress to do a study on reparations. What we would like to do historically, sociologically, economically, is to do a study to find out, is there a need for reparations? And number two, what should it be based upon, and how will the compensation be given? You know, whether it be monetary or free scholarships or no taxes for the next 10 years for that group of people. There are all kinds of ways to pay, you know, reparations. Is the evidence out there? Of course, as we're finding out from insurance companies that cheated African Americans in slavery. There was insurance policies on slaves here in Nashville. As I point out in my book, The African American History of Nashville, published, you know, in 1999, I found insurance companies that actually insured slaves in the city of Nashville. And the city of Nashville owned slaves. It owned dozens of slaves that kept them in the workhouse, and they built the sewers that partly are what we use today. They built the streets, they cleaned the streets, and so on. So if you really get into the evidence of reparations, the city of Nashville would have to pay those descendants who were enslaved by the city. The state of Tennessee, railroads were built in this particular state using slave labor. So we can prove it. It's just how you're going to pay it.
Okay, Dr. Lovett, and of course, let me thank you for coming by and giving us that excellent information. We're going to have you back to talk about reparations.
Okay.
Of course, we'll be back with our audience next week. Thank you and good morning.